Welcome, I'm Coach Woodbray, and this is My House Throws. Welcome, My House Throwers. I'm Coach Woodbray, and in this video we're going to be covering the wheel drill or the half turn. The wheel is the connection of the movements of the back half of the ring to the movements of the front half. The connection of the two halves involve a sprint, a time of speeding up and generating momentum and power. The wheel is the drill that generates and controls that speed and turns it into power. A lot of times I like to call this drill the corkscrew because we're going to stay wide at the very beginning of the wheel drill or coming into the wheel drill, get more tight at the very end, and so as our leg extends, we're like a corkscrew. We started wide and now we're going to be nice and tight, and we're driving through that shot put or discus. There are a few ways that we can begin the wheel drill. There are 3 different versions that I coach. The first version is for more of beginners. You're going to already start into that position, more of so of how you're going to land in a reel throw. The second version and third version I will add on after I've talked more detail about the first version. Now, before we talk about the different aspects of this, we need to understand the difference between shot put and discus. You're going to be over your knee a little bit more than a discus thrower because your counterbalance is right next to your neck, where a discus thrower, their counterbalance is far from their body, because a discus, we want as far from you as you possibly can. Some key things you're going to want to look for, and I'll point them out in the different versions. One, your orbit is going to be critical in the wheel drill. It's hard to maintain a high point for your whole throw. So at the beginning of this drill, you're going to start at a low point. At the middle point, you're going to be at the high point. At the power position that you're going to be transitioning into, you're going to be back at the low point, and at the very end of your throw, you're going to be at the high point. So we need to be conscious of where our orbit is and what it looks like, and trying to keep a very good orbit. The second thing is you need to make sure you load your delivery side. Being of where you are, where your hips are, because your hips don't lie. If your hips are in the wrong spot, you're going to notice it. Loading also includes where your force is being applied. Is it being shifted to the front out the sector, or is it being generated by driving into the ground and allowing some power to be generated? So I'm going to mention different aspects of where we want our drive and our force to be so that you are properly loaded. The other thing dealing with being loaded, you've got to have the right posture. Your posture is going to contribute to being the right angles and the right spot so that we can drive into the ground and have the power that we desire, and so that we can maintain those positions so we can have the power. The third thing, we want to maintain our stretch reflex. Once again, this drill is going to be a drill that helps us transition into the power throw so that we have good power and we have a good throw, and it's free of major mistakes. Version 1, let's talk about the delivery side. In the very first position, we're going to have our feet at 9 o'clock. We're going to have our knee pointing towards 9 o'clock also. When I land in that ring from the back half, I'm already going to be turning in midair. So this helps me realize that I'm not going to land at 11 or 12 o'clock. I'm already turning, and so this helps me realize this is how I'm going to land, or even more so, it could be all the way to 6 o'clock. It depends on the thrower and your personal preference. The other thing that I'm going to want you to do is have your hip already loaded. You're going to be already over that foot so that we have the right positions. As the ankle starts to turn, it'll flip my body and my hips will be right over my heels so I can drive through, whether it's a shot put or discus. The next thing I'm going to want is, where is the discus when I begin this drill? I'm going to have it straight out. And so when our first movements, we're going to start moving it to the high point, or setting our shoulder and setting the discus or setting the shot put as soon as we start this drill. So let's go ahead and now start the drill. We know where our body's supposed to be. What moves first? Our ankles need to move. Now that I can flare the delivery side heel out and my knee is going to drive into the ground, it's going to force me to start to move. You will always want to have that right side moving all the way until you release that discus where it slams up against the block side. As you start to turn those hips, your chest will be facing a little bit towards the ground because of the movements, and you're going to have a bended knee, which means your chest should not be perpendicular to ground. It'll be on an angle. So when your delivery side has those active ankles, that chest will also follow the orbit, and you will be on an angle or at the angle in which you're going to throw, and so it like flips your chest right there. Your shoulder and the discus or shot put, for a discus thrower, you're going to make sure you get that discus up into the air to where you're going to be throwing it. Shot put, you're going to get that elbow up there. It's a little bit different for a shot putter than for a discus thrower. We haven't had to do anything with our block side yet. Starting with the lower body, my foot will have driven out of the back half. This is where the two knees come closer together. Now they're not going to touch, but they're going to come closer together. And as I'm turning on my delivery side, my block knee will come close and it will tighten for a moment until I'm turned around and I can drive that foot into the ground. We don't want to shift our weight to the front. We want to drive it down to the ground to get some power and force to be able to use in our throw. Having those knees come together, it's going to be a lot like when you watch an ice skater. As they're skating on the ice and as they get really tight and their speed on how fast they can turn increases dramatically. The same thing's going to be with our wheel drill. You're going to want to make sure that we get that leg up, the shin, and get it close, and it's going to speed up. As long as that ankle continues to move, it's going to be a very fast motion or a fast movement, and you're going to have to put that block leg down pretty quick because of the speed that's being generated. The second way to start the drill is your delivery foot will not be pointing at 9 o'clock. It'll be pointing at 10:30, maybe 10, and your block foot will be pointing at about 11 o'clock. You will have your hips back, and you're going to practice the second one in shifting your hips over your leg, to make sure that you are understanding that as you come out of the back half, that you need to load that side. And so the difference between version 1, you're at 9 o'clock already loaded. Version 2 is you're going to be loading it for this drill. Version 3 is kind of a step into it. Now when I say step into it, we got to be careful that we don't shift our weight too much forward. We don't want it shifting forward. We want it to be driving into the ground. With that angle that you're going to be entering the wheel, you're going to be at an angle where all of your force is driving to the ground. So we want to get used to, as we start, dropping straight into that ground to create that force, and that's where my pivot point's going to be for my delivery side. So number 1 is for beginners who have already put their positions into driving into the ground and your hips are there. Version number 2 is trying to help getting us to get our hips into it or to load our delivery side. And version number 3 is to help not only load but it's also to help us to recognize the need for driving down into the ground and rotating or pivoting in this drill. Sometimes the wheel drill will not be your favorite drill. You'll prefer to do the back half into the front half with trying to skip the wheel drill, but it is a very critical drill into having a powerful throw. So you're going to have to perfect all the movements of the wheel drill if you want to have an efficient and effective throw. As you practice them over and over and you perfect them, you're going to be really excited about the delivery. It's going to increase your throw. It's going to increase your power. Even if you don't like it, practice it because you'll be proud of what you've built. Once again, it's my house.